Hey guys, and welcome to another video. Thank you so much for watching. And this time we're going to be taking a look at a fragrance from the indie company Slumberhouse, and the fragrance is called Zahd. Now Zahd was launched in 2013, and the perfumer for this fragrance is Lobb. Now Lobb is of course a perfumer behind all of these fragrances. He's not only the perfumer, he's also the creative director, and he has a very big influence in the brand. He does everything pretty much. It's not DIY necessarily like kerosene, but his word goes pretty much. So Lobb has done all of the fragrances in the line. I believe currently they're up to like 16 or 18. The earliest was released in 2008, and then like I said, this one was launched in 2013. He has been working on this fragrance for 2 years, and it was released in 2013, but it didn't really become available to the public until 2014. What happened was he wanted to upgrade his brand because, as you can tell from the old bottle behind me, and I'll show you a little bit about it in the presentation with the old bottles. What happened was they only had a 50% success rate on the engraving of the actual bottle, and sometimes if it were a lighter liquid, it was hard to read the name of the bottle because of the light engraving. In addition to that, I think the inclusion of the marbles that he had in the older style bottles, they were a little bit expensive, leaving 30 mLs of juice to kind of be separated amongst the marbles. So he decided that he was going to revamp the whole presentation. So he decided to, of course, come out with this style bottles, and he needed a little bit of money to kind of fund the production of the new presentation. So instead of doing something that he would regret, like taking out a loan or going to investors, he decided to make a limited edition fragrance, and he only produced 125 ounces of this cranberry inspired fragrance. So he had the pre-sale in late 2013, and in 2014 is when he actually managed to ship them out. Now I know they were supposed to be released in December and January. He did have to postpone it, but he told those who did take part in the pre-sale that if at any time you wanted him to refund their money, he was willing to do it. But everybody, I think, got their bottles in like late February, early March, and thus this fragrance came about. So Zahd, this is a fragrance he's been working on, like I said, for 2 years. It is a cranberry dominant fragrance, and it's very fruity indeed. What happens is he chose to only make it a limited edition fragrance because it contains very expensive notes like Mysore sandalwood and lotus and an attar that was custom for this fragrance. So he decided that he wasn't going to make this a permanent thing, and this is kind of going to be like a thank you to everyone who decided to purchase this fragrance not knowing what it was going to smell like, not knowing what it was going to look like, but it was going to be a surprise and a thank you. Of course, the tagline for this company is strange and unique perfumes. I think this fragrance is no exception to that rule. You have really weird and strange fragrances like Vict, Norn, Sova, Perrin Olive, Greve, which is now discontinued. So now we're going to be taking a look at this fragrance. I'm going to tell you what I think of the smell. Next up, let's take a look at the presentation for Zahd by Slumberhouse. Zahd is available in one size only, and that's the 1 ounce bottle. And this fragrance is only available in Extrait de parfum concentration. The concentration for this fragrance is 30%. So first up, let's take a look at the the pouch for this. It comes in this nice little felt pouch with this ruby red, almost like wine-ish color, and you have the drawstrings up here at the top. That's pretty much it, and it matches the bottle, or the color of the bottle, I should say. Before I show you the bottle, I want to show you the bottle for the old design. Here you have one of my fragrances, Sova. The reason he decided to change it again is because the engraving here on the front only had a 50% success rate, and I think it was just a hassle having these marble crystals or pearls inside, whatever you want to call it. So he decided to upgrade to this bottle. So here, taking a look at it, you have the name of the fragrance here in this beautiful, almost gothic font, the name of the house, and a little icon, I guess, to represent the fragrance. Over here you have Slumberhouse embossed in the cap. I don't know if you can see that, but really nice attention to detail. The cap clicks into place very securely. Nothing going on at the back. There's no serial number for this one, but it does have the size. It says 30 mLs embossed there at the bottom of the bottle. The atomizer gives you really good distribution. I didn't want to spray too much of it, but you can actually control the spray of this bottle. I really like that, and that has pretty much been the presentation for Zahd by Slumberhouse. So what I get in the opening of this fragrance is a very fruity overtone. I know there's cranberry listed as a note. I think it's the most dominant note, but there's also a very noticeable cherry note. This fragrance actually reminds me of a brand of shisha that I used to smoke called Nakla, and they had a cherry flavor. And this fragrance, because of how dense and how rich and even viscous it is, it reminds me of that. I know it contains the note of benzoin, which is a sweet resin. It has a vanillic overtone, but also has a smoky quality to it too, kind of medicinal at the same time. It contains that, but it also contains the note of plum, which is kind of faint and in the background. It's not overly dominant or domineering in this fragrance, but it's definitely there, and it provides that unusual, almost unorthodox sweetness in the background. Now, like I said, it does contain the note of sandalwood, and I do get kind of a little bit of a vibe of sandalwood in this fragrance. I know it also has oak. I don't think I get too much oak, but one note that I am kind of picking up on in this fragrance that's not listed as a note is the note of tobacco. Now, maybe I'm getting that just because in my experience, a lot of fragrances containing cherry also have tobacco in them, kind of like Pure Havane by Thierry Mugler. Tobacco Vanille by Tom Ford kind of gives me like that cherry tobacco feel to it. So because there's such a dominant cherry slash cranberry note in this fragrance, maybe I'm kind of thinking that there is going to be that you know, tobacco note. Maybe it's in there, maybe it's not, but I do kind of get that vibe from it. It's very dark and rich and complex, you know. I think that's one of the reasons why he added these Middle Eastern ingredients to it, because he wanted to increase not only the uniqueness but the complexity of the fragrance as well. Now, I think the most interesting note that this fragrance contains is the note of wine ether. So if you smell this note, it's not just the evocation, the color of the bottle and everything, but it's supposed to remind you a little bit, I guess, of red wine. I'm an avid wine drinker, I'll confess that. I drink a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon, a lot of Merlot. This fragrance doesn't necessarily remind me of wine, but it does have that darkness and that fruitiness, perhaps a rich, you know, decadently sweet wine. I can kind of see that, but it's really more about the fruity slash gourmand overtones. I don't think this fragrance is overly sweet though, and that's a good thing. I mentioned gourmand, I mentioned edible, but it doesn't smell like a candied, juvenile, sweet fragrance, you know? It has a maturity to it, and I think the maturity stems from its uniqueness and its complexity. So I definitely wouldn't see a younger kid wearing this fragrance, more of a mature gentleman. Of course, at the same time, it's somebody who's able to afford this fragrance, especially now that I can only imagine it's selling online at exorbitantly inflated prices because of its, you know, limited quantity release. So that's really what I get out of this fragrance. It's a very sweet fragrance, not very sweet, but you know, it's sweet and it's fruity, you know, nuances and facets. It has that cranberry slash cherry note in the introduction. As it dries down, the wood becomes a little bit more apparent, the sandalwood. I know there's a little bit of oak in there. I'm not getting too much of that. Plum definitely does have kind of like this red wine feel in it as well. I know fern is listed as a note, but I don't really get too much green you know, qualities out of this fragrance. And lotus, yeah, champaca is another one. Champaca should come off a little spicy at times if I'm not mistaken. And I think tolu balsam, I don't really get too much of that. I do get a lot of benzoin, very thick, dense, rich, resinous, and fruity. That sums this fragrance up. In terms of compliments or complaints, I think this is a very alluring fragrance. I would say you're much more likely to get a compliment wearing this one. Even though it's very unique and strange, it's not off-putting, and I like that about this fragrance. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Last up, we have the rating. Take care. First up, we have uniqueness and overall smell, and I ended up giving this fragrance an 8 out of 10. Now, don't get me wrong, I think this is a very unique fragrance, probably one of the most unique fragrances I've ever come across in my fragrance journey. The only problem is that I don't see this fragrance catering to everyone's personal taste. So with that in mind, it really kept me from giving it a perfect score, but an 8 out of 10 is a great score in my books. Longevity, I give this fragrance a 10 out of 10. Excellent performance. It is an Extrait de Parfum, 30% concentration, so it's going to last for a very long time. One word of caution though, do not spray it on clothes. It does have that dark, rich red, almost ruby wine color, and I can only presume that it will stain clothes if it's sprayed on them. So please avoid that. Projection, I gave it an 8 out of 10. Projection is also very good. It will project very noticeably for, I want to say, 5 to 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours, something like that. It's only after that 6-hour mark, it starts to sit a little bit closer to the skin, becomes quite faint, but it's still very noticeable, especially if you bring your hand up to your nose and smell it off that. Good projection nonetheless. Versatility, I ended up giving it a 6 out of 10. It's not the best versatility, and that's only because of its lack of availability. So because of its scarcity and the fact that you cannot find it online anymore, it has been discontinued, it does bring the versatility down because you really want to withhold from wearing it too much. I wouldn't wear this one casually because of its lack of availability. Because of its smell and its composition, it's a very playful scent, and I think it would make a good formal scent too, you know, suit and tie, tux type of thing. I think this is a good cold weather fragrance, and it's very gender neutral. But again, it's more for the fragrance collector and the connoisseur, not necessarily the casual cologne wearer, somebody who's into like fresh, citrusy, aquatic fragrances and just wants to, you know, wear fragrance as a hygiene product, so to speak. So I wouldn't recommend it for that purpose, but if you're a collector, must get this one. And then last up, we have presentation. I ended up giving this an 8 out of 10. This really exceeded my expectations because it is an indie brand. So I wasn't really expecting too much out of it, but as you saw in the presentation segment, the attention to detail is actually quite nice. It's not necessarily a by Kilian or an homage, but very good attention to detail. I ended up giving it an 8 out of 10. Overall, I'm going to give this fragrance a 9 out of 10. I think this is an excellent fragrance, very unique, really standoutish. I love wearing it. I think it smells amazing, and it has a unique spot, you know, in anyone's collection, I think, because of its uniqueness and its complexity and the richness of the ingredients. Unfortunately, the lack of availability does withhold it from being, you know, a perfect score fragrance, but I want you guys to keep in mind that, you know, if you do come across this online and it's not inflated at an exorbitantly pricey price, definitely try it. If you can get a sample of this fragrance in any way, please make sure you do. Unfortunately, this isn't my fragrance. I'm holding it for a friend, so I'm fortunate enough that I've had the opportunity to review it. So guys, thank you so much for watching. That was my review of Zahd by Slumberhouse. If you are one of the fortunate ones who have been you know, lucky enough to own or try this fragrance, please let me know what you think by leaving a comment down below. Also, please don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to shoot me a message and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. So again, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Steven with another fragrance review from Redolessence. See you very soon.